morning. Today we'll be talking about albinism in light of the fact that we recently had the International Albinism Awareness Day. Good morning, Dr. Folakemi. It's a pleasure to have you on the program.
Good morning.
Yes. Now, we're talking about albinism. Can you tell us, what is albinism? What causes it?
So albinism is a genetic condition that is inherited. Usually people with albinism inherit a gene from both their parents that causes some disturbance in their ability to produce melanin in their skin, their hair, and their eyes. Now, melanin is the pigment or the color that gives us whatever skin color we are. And people with albinism are unable to produce sufficient melanin in their skin. So they have melanin deficiency, so to speak, and it's an inherited condition. Melanin is essential for sun protection, and therefore people with albinism, their eyes sensitive to the sun, and also affects the normal functioning of the eye. So people with albinism tend to have some visual impairment and, of course, sun sensitivity in their eyes.
Now, people in Nigeria, there are different ways they call them. Yoruba call them afin. I don't know what they call them in the East, but it's quite common in Nigeria. But people will notice, and they are aware that there are different kinds of albinism. Can you explain that to us?
Yes, there are many different genes that are involved with albinism. It can be caused by as many as 6 to 10 genes. So it depends on the type of gene that is involved. You know, sometimes there is a gene that causes complete absence of melanin because it cuts it off at a level before the melanin is even formed at all. And that is, gives a type of albinism we call OCA1 or oculocutaneous albinism type 1. We also have OCA2, 3, 4, brown OCA. So that's the reason why, sometimes you have some people who their skin is and their hair is completely white or completely yellow. And there are other people with albinism who have a little bit of an orange tinge to their skin and their hair. There are some people who they actually just have oculoalbinism, so their skin is okay, or it contains sufficient melanin pigment, but their eyes tend to be, the ones that lack the pigment. So that's, because there are various genes that can, result in albinism. So depending on the gene that is involved in the individual, that's what will manifest physically in their physical appearance.
Now, what leads to the birth of an albino? Because you've talked about the genes, but is there any particular way, for example, how sickle cell is explained? Are there any ways in which a person who has albinism is born, so that we know, because we know it's in families, but how does it manifest?
Yes, so the mode of inheritance is almost exactly the same way as the sickle cell gene or sickle cell anemia is inherited. It's what we call autosomal recessive. That means that for a person to have albinism, it means that both their parents are carriers of the albinism gene. The albinism gene is recessive, meaning that in the present, every human being has 2 sets of genes, one from their mom and one from their dad. So if one of those sets of genes is normal, like produces normal color, that is enough for a person to have a normal skin color, sufficient melanin. But if 2 parents donate the gene that it has melanin deficiency or is unable to produce melanin to both, they donate both the defected genes to a child, then a child is born with albinism. So it's exactly the same as the AS, producing SS or AS or AA. So 2 parents who are normally pigmented can give birth to a child who has albinism and can also give birth to a child who is normally pigmented. So it depends on which of their genes they transfer to the child, and that's how albinism is inherited. So that's why it tends to run in families, because it is a genetically inherited disease, you know, and not a disease actually. Albinism is not considered to be a disease anymore, it's considered to be more of a condition. So it's a genetically inherited condition that is transferred by autosomal recessive mode of inheritance.
Now, it's interesting you should say that because, you know, you and I know that unfortunately there's a lot of stigma around being albinos and being a child being born with an albinism. And we hear of stories of how a child is born and the father says, that's not my child, and abandons the wife and the child in hospital.
Right.
But surely that person should have had somebody in their family with it. Or I mean, why do we have such severe reactions, negative reactions? Although in some cases we have also positive reactions, but you know, a lot of the time it's negative.
Yes. So I think we as human beings generally tend to fear what we don't understand or what is unusual. So once you have a child, you know, who has Black parents and comes out very white and white hair, pink eyes, it looks unusual. And that's why some people, you know, become afraid or they do not understand that, you know, it's possible. So yes, many people may have had a family member with a history, but it's also possible that they may not have known that family member. And one of the reasons why we find that to be so is that a lot of people with albinism, you know, they unfortunately may succumb to skin cancer at a very early age. And so their family may not even have remembered them, you know. The person may have passed away from skin cancer maybe in their 20s or 30s. And by the time, you know, the children of the next generation are grown up, you know, they may not know or remember that aunt. But if they go back into their family tree, they may have, you know, their grandparents or grand aunts or uncles tell them, oh, we did have an aunt who had this color at some point in time. But, you know, people may not want to talk about, you know, the person because they died at a young age. So that is what we find to occur sometimes in people with albinism, and the fact that people feel, oh, there's nothing like that in my family. But when they actually go back to ask older or senior members of the family, they usually find out that, yes, there has been someone in the family with that trait at some point. And we need to educate people more about it. A lot of people just cannot simply understand how a Black person can have a white child, and we need to let them know that this is possible. It can be a hidden trait. So sometimes for people who are not scientifically educated, we say that we carry a lot of hidden traits in us. And sometimes those hidden traits can skip a generation and come out in the next generation. So they shouldn't be too worried about it.
So understanding albinism, you've talked about this, the skin, the sensitivity of the skin to the sun. You've talked also about how they are prone to skin cancer early. Why is that?
Well, you see, like I mentioned, the melanin in our skin is a natural adaptation for survival, particularly in this part of the world where we have very high UV intensity. So studies have shown that people who live close to the equator, where the UV intensity is highest, tend to have the darkest skin color, while people who live closer to the poles, the North and South poles, generally have lighter skin color. And this has been a natural adaptation that has occurred over thousands of years, because you find that this UV rays from the sun can cause DNA damage to the lower layer, that's the dermis of the skin, and the lower layer of the epidermis. That's where skin cancers usually form. And what happens is that when the UV rays of the sun penetrates the skin, it can cause DNA damage to the cells in the lower layer of the skin. and that can result in skin cancer. So the melanin actually acts like an umbrella
or
to
like
shield.
a sunblock.
Yes, like a sunblock. So
But instead of it just being SPF 50, maybe it's SPF 100.
Yeah, well,
200.
black skin, we have a natural SPF of about 13 or 14.
Okay.
So essentially, the melanin is like an umbrella over the nucleus of the cell to prevent the sun's rays, the UV rays from the sun, particularly the UVB, from damaging the nucleus to cause skin cancer. So when that cover is not there with people with albinism, then their cells are exposed to the UV rays of the sun, and there's DNA damage, which results in abnormal production of the skin cells, and that is what is known as skin cancer.
Okay. Now, that's about the skin. Explaining the eyes, particularly, people find it very disconcerting because when they talk to a person with albinism, the eyes move a lot. What is that? Why is that? And you were saying they also can't see. How does that affect the albino growing up? And what are the kinds of things you would say, for example, to a mother who has just given birth to a child with albinism?
Yes, so the eye dysfunction is also as a result of the melanin deficiency, and actually melanin in the iris and other parts of the eyes is actually very important for the normal functioning of the eye. So when that is absent, you have what is called foveal hypoplasia, and this can cause, the accommodation, the eye kind of opens and closes. It's like a lens that kind of regulates light. And in the absence of melanin, that regulation is a bit defective. So the eye tends to be kind of overwhelmed or confused with the amount of light coming into it. And that is what causes the eye to oscillate, that it moves from side to side, is something we call nystagmus. But basically what happens is that the eyes, due to the lack of melanin, is unable to handle the amount of light coming into it and is unable to function normally because of the lack of melanin in the eyes. And so they find that because they cannot process the light sufficiently or normally, they are unable to see clearly, and it also affects particularly the ability to see far away. So people with albinism generally have what is called short-sightedness. They are unable to see things that are too far away because the lens of their eyes is unable to, adjust to different amounts of light due to the lack of melanin. So that is what causes the eye dysfunction and a lot of other things. It's a bit complex, but it's difficult to explain without it being too scientific. However, generally, they do have visual disability, and that is a major problem with education with people with albinism, because of course, when you're in a classroom, you can't see the board, you can't see your notebooks. It's going to affect your ability to, your academic performance generally. And that is something that tends to be a challenge for most people with albinism. And so in a mother who has a child with albinism must, of course, have the child see the ophthalmologist early, even though a lot of the problems with the eyes are not really corrective, but they can be aided. So there are glasses that are visual aids. They cannot completely solve the problem, but they can make things easier for the child to see, so that when the child starts school, they will not have so much difficulty seeing the blackboard or seeing the whiteboard or seeing their notebooks or trying to read. And then we always advocate that children with albinism must be at the very front in class so that they can actually see the blackboard or the whiteboard and be able to follow the lessons. Once they are, at the back or further away, it's always a difficulty following, in their studies and in their academics.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ifeoluwa, for coming on the program. It's a pleasure to have you with us. How old are you? How long have you been living with albinism?
From childbirth.
How old are you now?
I'm at my 30s now.
Okay. So, since you have had albinism, are you aware of anybody else in your family with albinism, or were you the only one? What has it been like living with albinism?
As I heard that there was one old grandma that even my parents, as my father, don't know the person, but maybe according to history or story after giving birth to me, that there is someone like her that have a skin like her. So that is that. And as person with albinism, to be a person with albinism, it's not that easy, especially in our society. So different name, challenges in school, because during school, primary school, I used to go to the board to write, and some teachers don't understand why I'm doing that. Some will shout on me, but luckily I have few that really makes me to feel better. So it's either they said after writing, I should go and take my time to write on the board, or to collect from someone, from a student after writing. And they make sure that my albinism, my no vision is not an excuse to not do my assignment or to not do classwork. They used to, I have like 2-3 teachers there when I was in primary school. But I have some that, if I actually have one particular teacher when I was in primary school that she don't even bother to hold my notes. She just ate the skin. She don't want to know. So that time I was in primary 4. So, as a child, I really like that class. I really like that she will not even check my notes. So I don't bother to write. I don't bother to do assignment because I know that she will not check it. But some other teachers, I have to do it because they will deal with it. Even if I don't do it.
So that's good. So what level of education did you reach?
For now, HND, higher diploma.
That's very good. That's very good. And have you found, how were you educated as to how to take care of your skin? Were you educated as a young child and you know how to take care of your skin, or did you have to find out later? And have you had any complications from it?
No, from my childhood, because I'm not from rich home, so we do everything together. There's no special care. But when 2011, so someone invited me to a group, the Albino Foundation in Lagos. So then when I got there, because when I was in secondary school, I used to tell my friend that I want to be a nurse. But because of the way I used to look, my low vision like that, they will say that you that cannot see book, is that you that want to give someone injection? So when I get to that group as a staff, so I see that Mommy Josephine she's a nurse. So, and then I started know that I have to be using my umbrella, wearing long sleeve, using sunscreen. Before, I don't have any knowledge of that. Even my parents, I don't think they know, or either they know that, but they just wait it that we don't even have money to buy umbrella, to buy sunscreen, just live the way we are living. Or maybe they don't have the knowledge. But as a person, I started having this knowledge after my secondary school.
Now, that's very good knowledge. And I know you're very active, and particularly in the Albinism Foundation in Oyo State where you are now.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, how do you, are you a passionate person? Do you go out to educate others like you and bring them in?
Yes, I used to do it, especially on my social platform. And recently, I started YouTube channel to talk about albinism, to use myself as an experience to talk to people about it. And if I see anyone, one-on-one advocacy too, I used to lecture parents, lecture anybody with albinism that I see.
So do you have any words for people out there who are like your teacher in that primary school that was stigmatizing you? Because I know you meet a lot of them in the society. Do you have any words just in case you can speak to them over this platform? What would you tell them?
And any teacher in primary school, secondary school, if they have a child with albinism in their school, they should know that just a child cannot see from the back seat. They have to position his or her seat at the front. And even sitting at the front sometimes might still difficult. The person with albinism students need extra time, extra attention. Not just that, okay, I asked all of you to write notes, all of you should submit. They have to check either you write it correctly or not. And they should know that as person with albinism, they cannot wear short sleeve because most of schools, their uniform usually to be short sleeve. So they should know that first, children with albinism need to be wearing long sleeve, and any activities they want to give them should not be under the sun. Either if they want to punish them, they want to beat them, they can beat, but not like stay under the sun because
cutting
of
grass and all that. Yes. Okay. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. We're very happy to have you here sharing your experience with us. And of course, along with the World Albinism Day, united, to have your voice heard. Your voice is being heard by millions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dr. Folakemi. Dr. Folakemi.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you now, just going by her experience, now she's very fortunate. She actually has her skin looking, nice and still, and she doesn't have all the stigmata that sometimes you see in albinism. But what are the kinds of things that you would normally see in a person who hasn't had that care, who hasn't had that education that she has had on how to take care of herself?
Right. So we do see a lot of people with multiple skin lesions. The skin may be very wrinkled and thickened, unfortunately, and this is as a result of sun damage. So we have something we call solar elastosis. So the sun actually kind of shrivels or wrinkles up the skin. And, that is quite common on the face, on the neck. It's very interesting because when you examine a person with albinism, you see a very sharp demarcation between the part that is exposed to the sun and the part that is covered by clothing. And the part that is covered by clothing looks so smooth and milky white. And then you have the part that is exposed to the sun, usually the face and the neck, sometimes becoming reddish and wrinkled. And then you have a lot of what we call solar lentigens, that the spots or freckles on the face, on the neck, on the forearms. And then a lot of people can have reddish discoloration. That's more of like sunburn. And, so the skin may be burnt and pinkish or reddish scaly. We do see that. And then, of course, we may also see some chronic wounds or ulcers, which are usually early forms of skin cancers. And then we do actually see very late forms of skin cancers that are really, really extensive. And most of the time, these skin cancers are on the head and the neck, because those are the parts that are exposed to the sun the most. And so they have very large ulcers and wounds that, may actually disfigure the face or the neck. And this is very distressing when we see them at that stage.
And what about the black marks, the very dark ones?
So those are the freckles or the lentigens. You have those, or ephelids. You have those like what in Caucasians we call freckles. So you do see those dark spots on the face as well, and sometimes on the forearms, on the neck, that we see. So with people with albinism, we don't see much of melanoma, incidentally, because they actually don't have, much of the melanin, and but we can have some what we call amelanocytic melanomas. What the kind of skin cancers that we usually see in people with albinism are what we call BCCs, basal cell carcinoma, and SCCs, the squamous cell carcinoma. And very rarely we would have melanomas in people with albinism.
Wow, you won't believe it. Time has gone completely. And so do you have any quick words? Because right now our time is actually up. Do you have any quick words for our listeners?
Yes. So what I would like people to know is that a lot of the complications with albinism can be well managed. As you can see, Ife, who has been a long-time member of the albinism awareness groups and foundations in both Lagos and Ibadan, has received sufficient education to help her to manage her skin properly. And our goal is that every person with albinism should have that knowledge. Protective clothing, the use of umbrellas whenever they go out, sunscreens as much as possible. Sunscreens are a bit expensive, but not everyone will be able to afford to use them. But using an umbrella and protective clothing, a sun hat, is very essential for people with albinism. And as we've mentioned, encouraging children with albinism in their education and giving them the extra support they need to be able to succeed academically is very essential, because people with albinism have normal and above average intelligence. Once they're able to make up for the slight visual disability, they have no problems excelling academically. And we need to encourage that. And generally, we need to stop the stigma. The stigma of albinism in the society has no place. It has, if we are against, white people for racism, then why should we have a similar kind of discrimination against people with albinism? It should be totally and completely discouraged and stopped. And rather than make fun of them or the fact that they can't see, we should encourage them and treat them as normal human beings that they are, wherever we find them. And people should not discriminate against people with albinism in the workplace or deny them job opportunities because of their albinism, because that is also very, very wrong. So just want to encourage everyone to accept that people are different, skin colors are different. Some people may have a yellow skin color, white, brown, black, whatever color you are beautiful and special the way that you are and the way God has created you. And we should try to encourage our albinism community and not discourage or discriminate against them.
Thank you so much. God loves all his children. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Please like, share and subscribe for new video updates.